is you should test these ideas yourself with your own experience. As a matter of fact, Paul sponsors a study abroad trip through border links to the borders going this December. I will be leading that group, as I have since 1994, to the border to study all the issues on both sides of the border. It's somewhat if anybody is concerned and really wants to explore the issues that we talk about tonight for themselves out of their direct experience, there's room for you on the trip, and I welcome you to come along with us. I have to say right off the bat that it's not easy for me to distinguish the truth from the falsehood in terms of what Mr. Simcox has said. I do know that one thing he said is directly untrue. The head of Border Links was here on Depaul's campus last week. Border Links does not collaborate or cooperate with to go to the Minutemen and ask them to cease and desist, claiming that they do cooperate with one another. Universities are places where respectful but critical hearing is given to ideas that are not only controversial, but which directly contradict their core values. Make no mistake about it, the ideas that Mr. Simcox presents, and more importantly, the actions that he and his organizations take, directly contradict Depaul's core values. For 110 years, Depaul has been a university that serves immigrant peoples. In its early history, Depaul welcomed students who were excluded from other universities whose policies enforce religious and ethnic quotas. I speak today out of the tradition of Catholic social teachings, which have guided our history as a university. That tradition is quite clear. The issues surrounding the immigration of peoples here and across the globe are more than economic issues or issues of law and order. They are moral issues. From this point of view, those migrating to the U.S. are not illegal alien invaders, as they are called on Mr. Simcox's website. Listen to Pope John Paul II in 1995, quote, "In the church, no one is a stranger. The church is a place where illegal immigrants are also recognized and accepted as brothers and sisters. Solidarity means taking responsibility for those in trouble," unquote. I think we can all agree that current immigration policies are deeply flawed. But as we debate the issue of immigration reform tonight, I ask you to think this through in light of Pope John Paul's declaration and ask yourself, is this a policy that I want to see applied to my brothers? Are these actions that I would support applied to my sisters? I wasn't sure which Mr. Simcox would show up tonight. In fact, several Mr. Simcoxes have shown up tonight. The real test came at the very end when his solutions only deal with issues of law enforcement. On the other hand, he would like you to believe that he's a compassionate person, at the same time rejecting the organizations along the border that are doing life-saving work every day. There is an organization that is solely concerned with rescuing folks in distress in the desert. It's called No More Deaths. Find it on the website, and if you're concerned with that, then volunteer and go and work with No More Deaths. They don't have ulterior motives. As I said, I wasn't sure which Mr. Simcox would show up tonight. Don't be deceived as you apply critical reason to the ideas. He has undergone an extreme makeover for his visit to Depaul. He claims not to be a racist. He says no bigotry is tolerated in his movement, but his movement has been thoroughly infiltrated by neo-Nazi and white supremacist organizations who publicize his projects. By the Aryan Nation, for one. The Aryan Nation has called upon, quote, all Aryan soldiers to join the Minuteman movement. If in fact he is truly committed and sincere in his stance of no bigotry, then I would expect some much more thoroughgoing efforts to make sure that the neo-Nazis and the supremacist groups are not part of slitting your throat and taking your money or selling drugs to your kids or raping your daughter, and they are evil people, unquote. Is that the statement of a non-racist? No. He may claim to be leading a peaceful, law-abiding citizen group. What then are we to make of the following statement that he has made? Quote, if you're breaking into this country when this country is at war, then you are a potential enemy of this country, and you should be treated accordingly, unquote. Or this statement, quote, take heed of our weapons, because we're going to defend our borders by any means necessary, unquote. Are these the words of the leader of a peaceful, law-abiding, citizen-led initiative? He claims to be assisting the Border Patrol. If so, why have the actions of Minutemen groups been denounced by that radical liberal, President George W. Bush, Mr. Simcox wraps himself in the law, claims to be an upholder of the law, but he didn't tell you tonight that he himself was arrested, charged, convicted, fined, and sentenced to 2 years probation for carrying a loaded weapon on grounds of a U.S. national monument in violation of federal law. When asked about his own law breaking, Mr. Simcox reportedly said, quote, I think it's funny, it's more publicity, unquote. Maybe that's the old Mr. Simcox, and maybe the makeover is for real, but I'd like to see the old Mr. Simcox truly laid to rest. There's more, but I won't go into it. I urge you, as you wait tonight's speech, to check out all the different Mr. Simcoxes. It's not hard. It's all over the internet. The current debate about migrants has been poisoned. Mr. Simcox, Lou Dobbs, and many others would have you believe that securing our borders would solve all of our problems. Please note that in his final solutions, there are only law enforcement solutions. The U.S. Catholic bishops are on record as rejecting this simplistic solution. Bishop Barnes, speaking as the head of the Bishops' Committee on Migration and on behalf of all U.S. Catholic bishops, recently said, quote, we reaffirm our view that enforcement-only measures at any jurisdictional level will further drive undocumented workers into a hidden underclass and create more fear and suspicion in migrant communities. Such measures will not repair a system that is inadequate to meet the labor needs of our economy. Migrant workers, including the undocumented, provide great contributions to our nation's economy by working in vital industries. Yet our country has refused to acknowledge these contributions and has instead relegated them to a permanent underclass of workers without full rights in our society. This is unworthy of a great democracy, unquote. Not only Mr. Simcox, but we as a nation have engaged in the vicious rhetoric of blaming the victims. Crossing the Arizona desert when summer temperatures can soar to 116 degrees is a dangerous and frequently deadly act, as Mr. Simcox showed to us. Only desperate people would attempt it. I have to comment about his comments about terrorism. Many self-respecting terrorists would he put his life in the hands of the kinds of coyotes that Mr. Simcox described and cross through the deserts when you have the Atlantic coastline, you have the Pacific coastline, and you have 5,000 miles of the Canadian border. In fact, the terrorists who came to this country legally on visas and overstayed their stay. So it's not as simple as Mr. Simcox would have us believe that somehow the main threat of terrorism is coming from our southern borders. The walls that we have built with our tax dollars have created this humanitarian crisis of loss of life in the desert that Mr. Simcox showed you. Those walls were designed to force people out into the deserts under the illusion that somehow people would just quit and go home. But desperate people will take desperate measures. And as long as people in Mexico are suffering from starvation, suffering because their families cannot provide for their families, they will take measures to get into the U.S. I've been taking DePaul students to the borderlands, as I said, since 1994, and I've talked with and shared meals in Mexico with dozens and dozens of migrants headed north. Their stories are all remarkably alike. I have to do this because I could no longer make enough money to feed my family. Why doesn't Mexico do something